Grenfell speaks to Ishmahil Blagrove. Please tell us a bit about yourself and how you're involved in all of this.
Well, I'm local, and I run a sort of social justice advocacy called Rice and Peas. We've been running Rice and Peas as a sort of independent sort of documentary production company that deals with social justice issues. So we started it in 1999. We've covered sort of many sort of global sort of issues, and we've always been sort of vocal from Speaker's Corner as a speaker for 30 years. And online through the Rice and Peas website and Facebook since about 2009, posting up all our posts are generally about social justice issues.
And how are you involved in this whole, Grenfell thing?
Well, immediately after the fire, there was the Prime Minister announced a public inquiry, and that's just totally unprecedented. To announce it within days. Do you know what I mean? Normally you got to drag them over hot coals, and it takes years to kind of get them that far. When they announced the public inquiry, you had to have something running in parallel to hold them into account. There were so many voices that were popping up from the community. The community was dealing immediately with sort of relief efforts and sort of the immediate needs of the people going through trauma and the families who'd survived. But there was a need at the same time to sort of have a voice that sort of challenges the government narrative. So of course, as soon as the judges announced, within weeks, and people are still in a state of trauma, people still running around, and the judge is coming in to the area to speak to people. Do you know what I mean? So it was about sort of challenging the sort of government narratives and basically not identifying, but sort of raising the issues that needed to be raised at that time. And so that was where we sort of stepped in. And there were other voices, do you know what I mean? And so what we tried to do was then sort of coordinate some of the voices that were coming out. So when the press were coming in, fielding out those sort of calls, so that there was a sort of dispersal of sort of voices and different faces and opinions. Do you know what I mean? That was coming in.
So leading on from that, how have you seen the community come together to deal with this kind of issue?
Well,
what's happened?
It's a totally unprecedented issue, and it's on such a scale that it's unimaginable. Do you know what I mean? Normally, with a campaign, you're dealing with, if it's perhaps say someone who's died in police custody, or for example, you're dealing with a family, you're dealing with an isolated unit, and the relatives much more easy to sort of manage, do you mean, coordinate. Here, you've got so many different voices, so many different families from different cultures with different views and opinions as to how things. You know what I mean? So that's been sort of chaotic on the ground, but the way the community has dealt with this has been absolutely outstanding. I mean, from the immediate aftermath, from the immediate sort of call that the fire was going on, I saw a sort of post up about 5-6 o'clock saying, people recognizing, the community recognizing that people were going to sort of be homeless and in need of certain goods. So the Tabernacle was opened up, Rugby Club was opened up, Harrow Club and all those centres had opened up, and there was a post up someone had put up saying they've got a room to rent. And if anyone's got not a room to rent, a room to sort of to put out there for. I saw that. Yeah, and I put up a room. I've got my children here, but I thought put the children in one room and I put up a room. So there was all those sort of things going on. As you got on the ground, you saw food, water, people sort of trying to sort of take, the fire was still going. People, so they were using the sort of Rugby Club as one of the sort of relief centres. So it was absolute chaos. But what you saw was the community coming together, and it was all backgrounds. Do you know what I mean? Everyone sort of came out and just chipped in what they could, and that was those are the first sort of immediate moments. There was a real sort of sense of harmony, community, unity, just what needs to be done, and the local government wasn't there, and so it was just a community that kind of stepped in and filled that gap, filled that void.
Just ask another question. In your opinion, what does justice look like to you?
It's difficult to frame. I mean, well, for me, someone should go to jail. People should go to jail, and justice doesn't mean sort of identifying local councillors or members of the KCTMO or perhaps a hot point executive. Or, you know what I mean? Justice doesn't look like that. It looks, I think, for me, it's about how did this happen. You know, what were the sort of measures that, or the sort of policies that were put in place to make such a thing happen? And quite frankly, that goes down to deregulation. So I think it goes right to the top. And I think that's what many people are frightened of. It's all very well sort of saying, oh, we want to get rid of certain councillors who may have had a fringe involvement in this in terms of the decisions that they made. But it goes far deeper than that. And I think people need to realise that. So people say, oh, it's not political. We don't want it to be political. How much more can you get than 100 people burning up in a building as a result of sort of local government neglect and decisions that were made by locally elected councillors? Do you know what I mean? It is as political as that. Do you know what I mean? And that's the reality. That's the reality that people need to come to terms with. People say it's political, and you've seen the way sort of the mainstream media have sort of gone about vilifying certain individuals, myself being one of them, far left and activist. Where they get all of this sort of stuff from? Far left politics. You know, I mean, I don't believe in the left or right. I think Labour and the Conservative Party are just as equally culpable to some degree.
And just to kind of follow on from that, so name 3 things that you think that the council should have done that they didn't do.
Are you talking about prior or post?
Post.
Well, post first. First of all, they should have been on the ground, addressing the immediate needs of the survivors and the people who sort of had managed to sort of get out of the building. They should have been there coordinating the efforts. They should have been there providing the services that were necessary and needed, and primarily the accommodation. And that was a big issue. They had, from my understanding, they'd had offers from neighbouring boroughs to coming and to sort of assist them in terms of the managing of the event. They believed that they could deal with it, and they couldn't. Do you know what I mean? These are the sort of immediate issues that they could have done. And in fact, 4 weeks later, we find that a lot of the issues that they should have done, could have done, still haven't done. And that's a shame on this council.
Do you have a message for the people in the community? Something that the ones that have been affected by this tragedy?
Well, I think certainly the immediate survivors and those from the tower and the bereaved relatives. But I think the community, the entire community, is going through a sense of trauma, and a load of emotions have come up. And out of that, people looking for targets, and it creates to some degree frictions and tensions. And some people saying, that person's not speaking for me. This one's, You've got to do away with all of that. Do you know what I mean? If this campaign is going to be, if you're going to hold people to account, if you're going to get justice, then it's going to need unity. It's going to need solidarity. It's going to need the strength of the entire community. If there are differences of opinion, then it's about sort of discussing those internally. It's about saying, listen, I don't like the way that's been said, or that's being done, or I'd like to see it done this way or that way. Do you know what I mean? There are various groups out there now that are sort of aiming to sort of push for justice. They all need to sort of come together. They all need to start listening to each other. They all need to sort of start articulating a strategy and developing a plan that's going to hold the government accountable, or those who are responsible to account, and get justice for the people who've lost their lives.
Thank you so much for your time, Ishmael. Thank you.
Nice one.